What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Powerlifting Quick Fix. This is episode number 4 and we are going to be discussing appetite today, and I want to kick it off with a simple method which we sort of attribute to something else, which is progressive overload. Now when I say that, you're probably going to think, oh, training. I like to apply it to food too. Let's say you're someone who struggles with appetite, which is probably why you're watching this video. You take in 3,000 calories, okay, or 2,500, whatever. To then try and jump to 4,000 is unrealistic. The same way that jumping from a 100 kilo bench press to a 150 kilo bench press in a week is also. We need to progress that over time, whether it's the lift or whether it's the calories. We need to acclimate to that new weight or that new calorie amount. And we're going to do that through progressive overload, making sure that every week, week by week, we are making improvements and we are allowing ourselves to either adapt to that new weight in strength training form, or adapting to that new calories in the appetite form, which is the topic of the video. So let's jump in a little bit more detail as to sort of techniques for building appetite, and let's do it. I'm not going to necessarily list tips. I'm going to sort of just go through some stuff. So the first thing I want to bring to your attention is carbs. I think carbs are crucial for this. Carbs are protein sparing, which means that we can conserve muscle tissue through the use of carbohydrates. In addition to this means that we can then load more carbohydrates with more frequency. And as we know, carbohydrates are much more easily absorbed than that of proteins and fats. Proteins and fats are much more satiating. They are much harder to digest, especially in the quantities needed that we're going to be needing them in to grow. And so whether that be for strength purposes or hypertrophy purposes, we're going to need a lot. But it isn't as simple as just hammering carbs. We need to look a little bit deeper. So what carbs are we going to hit? And that's where sort of looking at that FODMAP and easily digestible sources of carbohydrate comes into it. So I personally respond really well to rice and bagels. Now, bagels being a bread, we initially think, maybe not the most easily digestible, but it's all down to personal preference. It's not sort of a one size fits all. And so for me, I respond well to bagels. So I hammer them most 3-4 a day minimum. A lot of people, especially in the bodybuilding industry, will fall to oats because they taste good. They are generally sort of on paper a good form of carbohydrate. But when we look a little bit deeper in terms from the appetite side of things, it sort of creates phytic acid within the gut and a lot of other digestive issues that are going to maybe impede your ability to, one, absorb all the carbohydrates from that oats, two, digest it faster and be hungry again. And so is it the best source of carbohydrate from the appetite standpoint? Arguably not. So you've had your big bundle of carbohydrates with this meal that you've now decided to have. What are we going to do about it? We're going to eat these carbs and then we're going to look at a little 10-minute walk after. Now, I'm a big fan of the 10-minute walks, which are not necessarily designed, but are pushed quite a lot by my good friend Stan Efferdin. And some of the key things that I think are important with 10-minute walks. One, we can increase insulin sensitivity, which is great for sort of absorbing more of those carbohydrates that we take in. We can also increase nutrient partitioning, which again sort of leads to us being able to shunt that newly absorbed, whatever it is, to the right area and maximize sort of the absorption and metabolism of that food. They are also twice as good as metformin, which is the diabetes drug that's used to sort of limit blood sugar, manage high blood sugars. And so we can use them simply on that front if need be, but also they're going to help with reducing blood pressure. And something that comes about is you might think that me sort of recommending cardio for appetite doesn't make much sense, because it's going to, if you're struggling with appetite, then you're struggling to be in the surplus. So adding cardio is going to sort of be the reverse effect of that, as generally aids more of a deficit. I don't think so. If we add again these 10-minute walks, I think one, the sort of amount of cardio it's going to amount to is 30 minutes walking. That's a healthy amount that you should be doing anyway, to sort of maintain health. And I think a good sort of healthy human is going to be in a much better position to absorb food than that of an unhealthy sedentary adult. And so for me, I would have you walking as sort of often as you can. I think 3 10-minute walks are crucial, really, from the health and sort of appetite standpoint, which is the whole point of this video. And so, yeah, I'm a huge believer in 10-minute walks, or just generally little bits of cardio. My shoulder is really hurting from holding this camera up. The next thing, frequency. I think frequency is huge, and I would sort of look to get frequency over quantity any day of the week. I think eating a lot of meals is going to be more beneficial from the appetite standpoint than eating a fewer bigger meals, because when you take on sort of, a 1,200 calorie pizza, for example, yes, you've taken a lot of calories in, but you are full. And be honest with yourself, after a big Domino's, you are full for hours and hours, or maybe even the end of the day if you're eating it relatively later on at night. And so for me, I would rather have, let's say it's 6 p.m. Instead of having a big Domino's with 1,200 calories, have, 3 or 4 probably from 6 for most people would be 3 meals, 3 500, 600 calorie meals. You're gonna, my left hand's swollen. You're gonna take on a lot more calories that way. And you're also going to have less digestive issues, which means you're going to probably have a more efficient digestive system. And so, again, from the appetite standpoint, this makes a lot more sense. The next sort of tip is going to be salt. I am huge on salt. You know I love salt. I mention it in pretty much every powerlifting quick fix I've done. And so I think salt is awesome because, one, it massively stimulates hunger. We get very hungry when we're salty, when we have a lot of salt. Additionally, salt, or sodium I should say, increases blood volume, and so we can sort of again take more of those newly taken on carbohydrates or whatever the meal you've had is, and we can shunt those to the muscles and the working muscles at that, and we can use more of those carbohydrates and not just sort of have them being utilized as waste, because that is sort of the exact opposite of what we want when we take food on. The final sort of tip, I guess, there's going to be 2 tips. I'm going to briefly say cold environments. I love a cold environment. I think being hit hot is sort of absolutely what you don't want for trying to take on a lot of food, and I think being cold massively aids digestion, massively aids appetite, and you want to eat when you're cold. You don't want to eat when you're really hot and stuffy. And then the final thing for me is going to be sugar powders. So sort of your dextrose, your fructose, and those sort of sugars. A lot of sort of the bodybuilding industry will look to more at a cyclic dextrin because it's a little bit, I believe it's just because it's molecularly lighter. And so maybe again from that digestion standpoint, it might be better. For me, I like dextrose. Dextrose stimulates amylase production within your mouth, which is sort of saliva production. So we can aid that sort of starch breakdown from a little bit earlier in the digestive tract. So we can begin digestion in the mouth a little bit sooner and a little bit better. Additionally, fructose, my other of the favourite, stimulates the liver to convert thyroid from T4 to T3, the inactive to active, which is obviously great. You know, T3, awesome thing. And so for me, putting a little bit of sort of dextrose on your rice or a dextrose on whatever, and having fructose in your post-workout drink or fructose in your intra-workout drink, or drinking a bit of, you know, orange juice with your breakfast or whatever your method of taking that on, I would suggest taking it on throughout the day for the reasons I've just discussed. And sort of, I don't really want to ramble on too much here. I think that's probably going to cover it. There's some basic appetite tips from me, from what I like to do with my clients. If there are any sort of things you think I've missed or you'd like me to go into more detail, then do drop a comment. I'm always open to the idea that sort of my way isn't the only way, or what I've said is wrong, or what I've said, you know, there's a lot more information that can be applied to that to sort of back my case up or whatever. I'd appreciate a comment regardless, and it helps me out a lot and helps me learn, helps you learn. We all win it from it. So yeah, I hope you've learned a lot. I hope you've enjoyed. Any suggestions for future videos, do drop them in the comments again. Follow me on Instagram, which is going to be on the screen right now. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed. We'll see you in the next one.